Leo soul, I need you to hear this first. Money and death are coming at the same time, and this moment will change everything. It may sound dramatic, but if you're honest with yourself, you've already felt it. That strange stirring. That low vibration beneath the noise of your routines. A whisper that says, this isn't it. Something is arriving, something big, and it carries the weight of both an ending and an opportunity. It's not here to scare you. It's here to awaken you. If you found this video today, trust me, it's not a coincidence. You didn't stumble into it. You were brought here by timing that's higher than logic and deeper than algorithms. This is divine timing, Leo. You're being pulled into a sacred invitation to face a crossroads where your relationship with security, identity, and truth is about to shift drastically. Think about it. Have you been feeling restless, even though everything looks fine? Have you been sitting in places that used to bring you joy but now feel hollow? Have the things you once fought for started feeling like chains? You, Leo, are the heart of the zodiac. You were born to lead with light. But somewhere along the way, perhaps you've dimmed that light to maintain peace, to hold on to comfort, or to avoid being too much. Now, the universe is gently but firmly telling you it's time to remember who you are. Not just the version people see, but the version your soul still longs to become. And here's the twist. The form of what's coming might look like an opportunity, a breakthrough, a solution. A job that promises more money. A person who promises to take care of you. A situation that seems perfect. But deep inside, your intuition is unsettled. Why? Because not every blessing is a gift. Some are tests in disguise. This is the spiritual threshold. Will you accept the gold and lose your fire? Will you take the offer and silence your truth? Or will you walk away, even if it means standing in the unknown, simply because your soul no longer fits in the old room? The concept of death we're speaking about isn't literal. It's the death of pretending. Of agreements made in fear. Of carrying roles that no longer nourish you. And yes, when these things fall away, it hurts. But that pain is a doorway. And on the other side is rebirth, the kind you've prayed for but maybe didn't know how to reach. Leo, this message isn't here to scare you. It's here to remind you, you still have time. You still have choice. And no matter what you've accepted before, you can choose differently now. So let me ask you directly, do you feel like something inside you is waking up, even if you can't explain it? Do you sense a quiet pressure building, like your soul is asking for something more, something true? If so, comment below, I'm listening. I'm ready. It may seem small, but that single sentence might be the moment everything begins to shift. Let me also take a moment to thank you from the bottom of my heart for your presence here. Every like, every comment, every subscription to Eternal Mindfulness helps us go deeper together as a spiritual family. Your support allows us to keep showing up with messages like this, messages that heal, awaken, and invite us all to come home to our true selves. And trust me, Leo, you'll want to stay with me all the way to the end of this video. Because what the universe is about to reveal to you is nothing short of sacred. Let's begin. There's a quiet moment that arrives before every awakening moment when something feels off, even if you can't quite name what it is. You might look around your life and see everything seemingly in place. The job is there. The relationship is still intact. The routine hasn't changed. But inside, there's a subtle ache, a tension between what is and what wants to be. And that, dear soul, is not weakness. That's truth rising. When your inner light starts to speak, it doesn't always shout. Sometimes, it stirs in your chest like the faint crackle of embers long buried under the weight of expectation. You feel it when you sit in meetings that once excited you but now feel empty. You feel it in conversations where you smile, nod, perform, but something inside you whispers, "This isn't me anymore." This is the early stage of what some traditions call a holy discontent, not a dissatisfaction with life itself, but with the mask you've worn to survive in it. It's not rebellion. It's not burnout. It's recognition. The heart, once vibrant and alive, begins to pulse against the cement walls it's been asked to live behind. You are not breaking down. You are breaking open. That dull, lingering discomfort is not a problem to fix. It's a signal. You're being called back not to a past version of yourself, but to something more honest, more whole. It is the discomfort of the soul remembering its original shape and realizing how long it's been folded to fit. And it's in these moments that your body often knows before your mind does. The tiredness that doesn't leave. The dreams that feel more vivid than waking life. The sudden emotional waves that hit you out of nowhere. These are not malfunctions. They are messages. Something within you is ready to rise, and before it can, the artificial structures must fall. It is a beautiful paradox. The more honest you become with yourself, the more unstable your life may appear from the outside. Because truth, real truth, has a way of destabilizing the very things that were built without it. A job taken out of fear. A relationship sustained by routine. A self-image polished to please others. These begin to crumble not out of punishment but as an act of release. There's a phrase once spoken in silence: peace is not found in avoiding the storm, but in learning to stand still while it passes through you. And you, Leo, are not meant to flee from the storm inside. You are meant to stand in it, heart blazing. Your discomfort is sacred. It is proof that your soul is still alive, still burning, still unwilling to be caged by convenience or control. Imagine your heart as a furnace once roaring, now muffled beneath layers of duty, performance, and emotional debt. And yet, even under the weight, it glows. It waits. It watches for you to notice. And when you do, it asks one simple thing: to be allowed to breathe again. Maybe the job still pays the bills. Maybe the relationship still looks happy on paper. But if the light has gone out, if you are functioning but no longer feeling, then it may be time to ask, am I living? Or just maintaining the illusion of life? You are not alone in asking that question. And you are not weak for feeling that something has changed. In truth, what you're feeling is a reunion. A return to the fire inside you that refuses to be extinguished. And now, I gently ask you, have you felt it too? That sense that something deeper is speaking through the stillness? If so, let your voice join the others who are awakening. Comment below and write, I am ready to hear my own light. Because sometimes, the most powerful transformations begin not with an answer, but with a quiet acknowledgement of the truth that's already burning inside. It's often said that not all that glitters is gold, and in this moment of your journey, Leo, that truth takes on a deeper, more intimate shape. As your inner light begins to stir and the voice within grows stronger, you're likely to find that the world outside offers you a mirror one lined with shining promises, timely opportunities, and tempting exits from discomfort. But when you look closely, that mirror may reveal not a reflection of your soul, but of the parts of you that were trained to trade truth for survival. What you're navigating now is not simply a crossroads, it is a test of alignment. And this test doesn't come loudly, with flashing signs or dramatic collapses. It arrives quietly, dressed as a chance to stabilize, to succeed, to be taken care of. A job offer with more money. A partner who says they'll fix everything. A path that feels familiar, safe, and even desirable if only you're willing to ignore the tiny voice that whispers, "This isn't it." There's a principle that teaches us how the mind seeks comfort, but the heart seeks truth. The more we listen to the mind alone, the more we'll shape our lives to avoid pain, rather than to honor integrity. And here's the hidden cost of that: peace may seem near, but only as long as we continue to abandon ourselves. Day after day. Thought after thought. Smile after silent betrayal. These are the moments when the soul begins to lose its color, not because of something catastrophic, but because of repeated agreements made in contradiction to our inner knowing. The ancient wisdom says that every time we act against our own conscience, we create a crack in the structure of our being. One crack may seem invisible, but over time, those fractures become a hollow, and that hollow eventually becomes a cage. That cage often looks beautiful from the outside. It's gold-plated. It's adorned with validation, prestige, and predictability. But inside it, the fire of your authenticity begins to dim. Not because you've failed, but because you've stayed too long in a role that was never written for your true self. In the language of energy, every decision we make carries a frequency. Some lift us closer to resonance with our purpose. Others pull us away, no matter how noble they appear. And so, when life offers you something you've been wanting, it's important to pause, not to reject it, but to feel beyond the surface. Ask, does this nourish my soul, or does it ask me to silence it? Just as water reflects the sky, our choices reflect our beliefs about worth and belonging. If you believe you must accept what doesn't feel right just to avoid discomfort, then comfort becomes your master. But if you believe your truth is enough, even when it feels uncertain, then you become your own compass. Some teachings suggest that the greatest wealth is not in what we possess, but in how we choose. When we choose in alignment with who we are, we gain something that no amount of money can replace, a peace that lingers even in the face of change, and a fire that doesn't require external permission to burn. So I ask you gently now, have you been offered something that looks like a gift, but feels like a compromise? Is there a contract, spoken or unspoken, that you've agreed to while secretly grieving your own silence? You are not wrong to question it. You are not weak to consider walking away. In fact, it takes tremendous strength to look at something the world celebrates and say, "This doesn't belong to me anymore." If you feel this, if you've lived this, I invite you to share your voice. Write in the comments, "I am choosing truth over comfort." Because every time you say yes to your soul, you remind the universe exactly who you are, and more importantly, you remind yourself. Sometimes, what leaves us isn't a person walking out the door, but a dream that no longer knows how to breathe inside our body. And when it finally slips away, it doesn't make a sound, it just takes its warmth with it. You might wake up one morning and realize the thing you poured your soul into, the relationship, the career, the version of yourself you worked so hard to maintain, feels like a beautiful house you no longer recognize as home. There's furniture in place, walls still standing, memories tucked in corners, but the life in it has quietly gone. This is what we call a soft death. Not the kind marked by a funeral or a dramatic goodbye, but one that occurs in silence. It's when your heart no longer stirs for what used to ignite you. It's when you show up out of habit, but your presence feels like a ghost. This death does not announce itself with tragedy. It announces itself with numbness. You're not broken, you've simply outgrown something that once matched your shape. From an energetic perspective, every part of our life exists in cycles. Just as the moon waxes and wanes, just as breath rises and falls, so do the things we love. And sometimes, the hardest part is not accepting that something ended, it's accepting that we are no longer the version of ourselves who needed it to stay. Letting go is often mistaken for failure, when in truth, it's a radical act of self-respect. There is wisdom in release, even if the world around us insists we cling. But if something once sacred now feels hollow, if what used to fit now feels like armor, it is not betrayal to put it down, it is survival. The image that comes to mind is a golden robe you once wore with pride, sewn from the threads of desire, belief, and identity. But now, that robe hangs awkwardly. It no longer fits the shape of your spirit. And the question is not whether it still shines. The question is whether you can breathe in it. Growth asks us not to throw away the past, but to bless it, thank it, and acknowledge when its time has passed. There is an old teaching that says everything we hold too tightly eventually begins to rot. Not because it is bad, but because all things have a time to serve us, and a time to release us. When we resist that release, we start living in a life we no longer belong to. It's like keeping flowers in a vase long after they've withered, pretending they're still alive, for the comfort of continuity. But continuity is not the same as aliveness. And you, Leo, were never meant to live in a museum of past dreams. You were meant to blaze forward, honoring what was, but never confusing it with what still is. So if you found yourself holding on to a version of love, work, or self that no longer reflects your truth, I want to tell you this: you're not losing something. You're simply witnessing its cycle completing. Release is not the end. It is the sacred beginning of space for clarity, space for renewal, space for something real to rise again. Letting something die is not a denial of its beauty. It is the ultimate recognition that its beauty has already served you. So I ask you now, in your own quiet honesty, what are you still holding that no longer holds you? What dream, relationship, or identity have you outgrown, even if you've been too loyal to admit it? If this speaks to you, share your truth in the comments. Write, I am honoring the ending. That one sentence may be the soft permission your heart has been waiting for to begin again. After something ends gently or abruptly, there is often a silence. Not the kind of silence that feels empty, but the kind that holds potential. It's the quiet before something new takes form, like a breath being drawn before the next word is spoken. This is the space of rebirth. And contrary to what many believe, rebirth is not about wiping the slate clean or starting over from nothing. It's about beginning again without pretending. It's the conscious choice to re-enter your own life, not as someone remade to fit the world's expectations, but as someone who has remembered who they were all along. Leo, You know better than anyone what it means to carry pride and to wear strength as a second skin. But what if I told you that real strength now lies not in holding your ground, but in letting go of the version of yourself that was built for survival? The one who smiled when it hurt. The one who said yes when the soul said no. The one who stayed when every cell was begging to walk away. There comes a time when even the most radiant star must collapse inward, not to disappear, but to be reborn into a supernova. This is not collapse as defeat, but collapse as transformation. And you, standing here in this moment of pause, are already on the threshold of that luminous shift. It doesn't matter how long you carried what wasn't yours. What matters now is your willingness to lay it down. In numerology, the number 9 is a sacred symbol of completion. It represents the ending of a cycle, but not an ending meant to destroy. Rather, it is the culmination of a journey, one that has taught you everything it was meant to. A 9-year, a 9 energy, is the harvest before the release. It's the full breath before the exhale. And perhaps, without realizing it, you've been holding your breath for too long. Think of a seed resting underground. It doesn't rush to bloom. It stays in the darkness, letting go of its original shape, breaking open not because it's broken, but because that is the only way to emerge. This is what you are now being asked to do. To stop apologizing for needing something different. To stop justifying your desire for peace, for joy, for meaning. You don't need a reason to begin again. You only need the honesty to say, this is no longer who I am. The universe doesn't require you to be perfect to give you another chance. It only asks you to be sincere. Sincere in your longing. Sincere in your willingness to shift. And sincere in your courage to no longer abandon yourself in the name of loyalty or familiarity. Because the truth is, no one can take away your right to rewrite your life except you. The pen has always been in your hand. Maybe you just forgot that you're allowed to put down one story and begin a new one in your terms. So if you feel the quiet stir of something wanting to be born through you, not from pressure, but from possibility, trust it. It might not look like a grand reinvention. It might be subtle, a new decision, a new boundary, a softer way of being. Rebirth often begins in the smallest shift that says, I choose to live in alignment with what feels real. And now I invite you to reflect, if you could begin again without needing to explain, justify, or apologize, what would you choose first? Share it in the comments. Your clarity may be the light someone else needs to step into their own becoming. Let this be the moment you remind yourself you are not starting over. You are starting true. When the heart begins to speak and the soul dares to shed its old skin, what follows naturally is a quiet, sacred question, now what? After all the inner work, the realization, the recognition of what no longer fits, there comes a moment when transformation must meet the ground. It must move from the unseen to the felt. From awareness into action. This is the part of the journey where rebirth isn't just an idea. It becomes a choice you make again and again with your breath, with your body, with your behavior. Healing, as gentle as it is, thrives in structure. Just as light filters best through a clean window, clarity flows more easily through a life that's been lovingly tended to. One of the first ways to ground your energy is through your physical vessel. The body often stores the emotional residue of past decisions, the ones you stayed in too long, the ones that drained you silently, the ones you knew weren't right but felt too tired to leave. When you begin clearing these patterns internally, the body asks for the same respect. Try beginning with something simple yet powerful, a 3-day detox. Not extreme. Not punishing. Just warm water, gentle herbal teas, and whole, clean food. Treat each sip as a reminder that you are no longer feeding what depletes you. Every glass becomes a small declaration that you are worthy of lightness, not just in spirit but in form. Each morning, before the world rushes in, give yourself 10 minutes to breathe consciously, deeply, slowly. Not to control your thoughts, but to return home to your center. Deep breathing regulates the nervous system, quiets inflammation, and most importantly, reconnects you to your own rhythm, which has always known what's best for you even when you couldn't hear it over the noise. If your work life has felt like a place of quiet suffocation, it's time to gently ask yourself, am I staying because this still aligns with who I am, or because I fear what will happen if I let go? Sometimes we remain in positions, roles, or environments not out of love, but out of fear of losing income, status, or predictability. But real security never asks you to abandon your peace. True value doesn't come from a title or a seat at a table. It comes from how fully you can be yourself while you're there. In finances, awareness is everything. Money is energy. And like all energy, it moves toward what you honor. Ask yourself honestly, am I using money to nourish my essence, or to uphold a version of myself I've outgrown? There is no shame in reevaluating your spending through this lens. Let it be an act of self-respect, not self-restriction. And in love, the most tender arena of all, take a compassionate breath and reflect. Does this connection expand who I am? Or does it shape me into someone I must become to be accepted? Healthy love holds space. Conditional love holds power. One invites growth, the other requires obedience. Your heart knows the difference. And it deserves the kind of relationship where it doesn't have to shrink to survive. If you're looking for gentle anchors to hold on to in this process, turn to symbols that support your healing. The color amber, warm, earthy, golden, offers energetic cleansing for the heart space. Just as it once preserved ancient life in its resin, it reminds you to preserve your own vitality. Light a candle in this hue. Wear it close to your skin. Let it become a quiet companion as you move through this transition. And notice how often the number 9 appears around you, on receipts, clocks, random signs. In numerology, 9 signifies completion, but not in a way that is harsh. It speaks of graceful endings, of soulful closure, of letting go, not to reject, but to make room for what is now more aligned. So as you stand on this path between who you were and who you're becoming, know this: every conscious step you take, no matter how small, is a vote for the life you were always meant to live. One that's not built on pretending, but on presence. One that asks not for your performance, but for your truth. You were never meant to settle for a life that simply looks good on the outside. You came here to live a life that feels true on the inside. And maybe, somewhere along the way, you started believing that safety mattered more than authenticity, that survival was the goal rather than alignment. But if anything in this message today reminded you of who you were before you had to shrink, compromise, or pretend, then take this moment as your sign. You are not late. You are not lost. You are exactly where the light wants to meet you. We began this journey with a quiet truth, that money and death may arrive at the same time, not as threats, but as symbols. One asking, what are you willing to receive? And the other, what are you willing to release? You've now walked through the discomfort, through the false promises of safety, through the slow unraveling of outdated dreams. You've stood at the edge of endings, and glimpsed the first breath of something new. Something real. Something unshakably yours. So I ask you now, what part of your life no longer reflects the person you're becoming? What would it mean to choose truth, even if it costs you the comfort of what's familiar? What might your life look like if you no longer had to perform for acceptance, but were allowed to show up, fully, without apology? You don't have to wait for perfect clarity. You don't need permission. The most powerful transformations begin not with certainty, but with a single honest decision. I am no longer available for a life that doesn't honor who I truly am. That choice, spoken or unspoken, is the threshold between surviving and living. And so, Leo soul, if this video has stirred something inside you, if even a single sentence felt like it had been written for the exact moment you're in, I invite you to leave a comment and write, I choose to live honestly. I choose my light. Because your voice matters not just to this community, but to the frequency you're sending out into the universe. When you speak your truth, you signal to the unseen, I am ready. Let me take a moment to thank you deeply for your presence here today. Every like, every comment, every share, and every subscription to Eternal Mindfulness is not only a gesture of support, it is an act of spiritual connection. Your energy helps keep this space alive, and allows us to continue bringing these soul-level messages to those who are ready to awaken, to remember, and to return to themselves. Thank you for walking this path with me. You are seen. You are heard. And you are never alone. And remember, death, real or symbolicis, not the end. It is often the invitation. The portal into the life your soul has always wanted to live. One of honesty. One of peace. One of powerful, quiet alignment. So stay with that breath. Let what needs to go, go. Let what wants to come in, arrive. You are not here to be impressive. You are here to be real. And real is more than enough.